we have people who are waking up every day really trying to understand how to do right for society. How do they ensure that our children are taken care of, ensure that the teachers are equipped and, can improve their workflow while also not hampering children, because we do understand that AI will have an impact.
People are seeing change and they go, I'm measuring issues with this. And then they're saying conclusion, right? And without really rethinking what needs to be rethought. At the same time, we're rethinking work. We need to rethink education, right? And if we still stay with the current state of measurements, we're going to be bound to those measures.
We've kept the same design across multiple technological paradigm shift. And this one is going to break it. But the educational system, instead of rethinking it, we are sort of trying to corral the technology around the same design. And I don't know how it will pan out, but it feels like it won't pan out. Hi, everyone. This is Udezue, and this is the ProductMind Podcast. With me today, Ezinne and I wrote Building Rocketships, and Ted Yang, who's the author of Ageless Peak Performance Using Artificial Intelligence. Today, we have a quick one for you, and we want to talk about the impact. Occasionally we'll talk about the impact of AI on work, on technology companies. Today, we want to come to you with some research on the impact on society. Specifically, one of the places that we expect a huge amount of impact is in pedagogy, in education. We're going to write a Substack about this, but unbeknownst to most of you, Ted is a regent, means that he's one of the supervisors and bosses of the Connecticut university system. So all the tertiary college people, he sort of oversees that for the state of Connecticut, amongst other people. And we've done some work in edtech as well. So today we want to talk about it. So Ted, why don't you tee this up? What are we dealing with here? What are we seeing and emerging as artificial intelligence ravages higher education?
Sure. So this one actually is education, not necessarily higher education. So all education, but certainly the big headline, if you saw it this week, is about Norway. Now, let me just set the stage here. Norway is extremely wealthy thanks to their oil money into their sovereign wealth fund. So let's keep this in context that they are a low population, high wealth country in the Nordics, and a very high quality of living and happiness factor country. However, they are very not happy about AI and about screens. And so what happened this week is that they started to severely restrict the use of technology for their students. And specifically, we're talking about outright bans on the use of AI, and depending on your age level, so grades 1 through 7, except in specific specialized cases, and then 8 through 10 after they figure out how they can train their teachers. So you're talking about for pretty much your entire primary, much of your secondary education in the country of Norway, you're not going to have access to modern tools such as AI. And the reason they cited for doing this was falling test scores. So there are standardized tests in Norway. And they also say that now 1 in 4 Norwegian students read below the OECD threshold. And so these are alarming stats, of course, but my point of view, and I think our point of view, is that this overreaction is basically just smacking of fear. And this is the easy way to deal with AI, by basically pretending it doesn't exist and creating a bubble around your students. So but let me just say one more thing before handing it off to you guys for analysis. There, at the same time, or relatively recently, a study came out from China, where if everyone doesn't know, China is the land of high stakes testing. There's literally one high stakes test called the Gaokao, which basically means high test, that you take in order to get into college. And it is the only determinant, okay? It's like taking the SATs, except literally nothing else matters, and you're force ranked. And the people at the top, they get to go where they want to go, And then the next tier get to go where they want to go, and all the way
If
down.
you're middle class, this determines your entire future.
You have no other choice. And low or middle class, right? If you have no other access, this is the way. And this goes way back to Confucian times, right? So if you're, and again, you can talk about whether it's fair or not fair. That's not for this discussion. But if you're lower middle class and you score amazingly well, which is difficult to do, let's be clear, it's an extremely hard standardized test, you are set for life, basically. Okay, meaning you get into the best possible schools and forever you get the best credentials. And so it's basically your game to lose. Now, China, of all places, is super pro AI. We've seen them come out with an AI strategy, 5-year AI strategy. No other country has done this. However, they discovered, and put this under, I'm so unsurprised, that students who use AI to do their work, their homework this is, and then therefore hand in the homework without actually spending the time. So they measure the amount of time these children used on homework, scored worse in standardized tests. Again, I'm so surprised that when students use AI to do their homework, they don't actually learn anything. So this is combination news that's basically reinforcing the fear that the people in Norway have as well, which is, look, overuse of AI when kids are outsourcing their brain results in worse standardized test scores. Now, the question is, what is the right response to this?
Yeah, isn't it? Gosh, my mind went in so many different directions.
Yeah.
Mostly probably philosophical directions. But you have some perspective on this from edtech. What are the parallels to what you're saying?
So, I mean, I also am part of a higher education board of advisors, and this is a big topic for us, just FYI. Exists in Arlington, yes. And but there it's much easier. We're not having conversations around banning AI. Most definitely. We're actually trying to figure out how to use more AI. One of my clients, actually, I just wrapped up an engagement with an edtech platform, and this was central. I think it's really important to make sure people understand that this AI thing isn't just in the world of technology and product. That we have people who are waking up every day really trying to understand how to do right for society. How do they ensure that our children are taken care of, ensure that the people who the teachers are equipped and can improve their workflow while also not hampering children, because we do understand that AI will have an impact. So for me, again, going back to our core philosophy, which is AI as a tool, I think that the core of this is it's a banning the tool versus banning bad use of a tool, right? And it's more that just so you know, Norway isn't the only one. Like even Utah has banned screens for K through 5. There are other states. I think Tennessee is in the middle of doing this again. So there's Utah, Alabama, Kansas. Those are the top ones based on my client work. They're banning screens K through 3 or K through 5. But with screens, AI is also out of the picture, like period. So the way I think about it is I tend to agree on the lower end. From K through 3, I actually think it's not a bad thing because it's a developmental phase for the children, right? So do you have a sense for Norway? Is it across K through 12? Or is it just for particular classes?
It's staged.
Perfect.
But it is below 7th grade, right? I think that's like that. Yeah, below 7th and below is basically no.
I like your framing it, isn't it? Because we don't allow elementary school kids to use calculators. We don't, right?
Yeah, we don't. We don't
allow them to. They get to a certain level and we say, okay, fine, you've mastered the basics and you can use this tool.
Exactly.
Right? So it feels like a mirror of earlier, maybe even less dramatic things that would have impaired development.
Exactly. And our children talk about it all the time. I think we've shared with the audience, our kids, because they're in the process of developing themselves and developing skills, etc., they actually challenge, like, is this good for society? We really need to think about it. So I agree to an extent with what Norway is doing. But I do think it needs to be thought through. I really think K through 3, no. Like, think about it. As parents, you hand something to your children. It's this unsupervised, passive use of the tool, replacing the teacher, failing to engage in meaningful ways. That's the challenge. If it's underlying and not seen and helping, okay, and it's powering something else, I don't think that that's a bad thing. But it's just, we need to be really thoughtful from K through 3. Then from 4 through 7, I do think that measured use could make sense. And then from 8 and beyond, it's how you want them to engage with AI that matters more. So to me, I know you started off with saying, hey, we think, but again, it's measured. If we are intentional and practical, and we don't give graphing calculators either, right? So we give regular calculators, right, from grade 4 through 6, and then graphing calculators come later. So I think that type of engagement makes the most sense, and I think I don't see a problem with that.
Can I just maybe just like we want this to be short and sharp. So as both of you talk, my mind goes to many places. One is it's super early. So these bans are crude, non-specific, and they feel desperate. Okay? So education is going to be decimated in some way. Like one of the analogies we talk about is...
What do you mean by decimated?
Every 6-year-old in 10 years will have 10,000 PhDs in their pocket from the time they're 6 and the time they're dead. Okay? So if you really frame it that way, and I'm sure there are more creative ways to frame it, you understand that education, in the current educational system, was invented 200, 300 years ago to create farm workers or to create people who would work beyond farms. We've kept the same design across multiple technological paradigm shifts.
Exactly.
And this one is going to break it. But the educational system, instead of rethinking it, we are sort of trying to corral the technology around the same design. And I don't know how it will pan out, but it feels like it won't pan out if we do it that way.
I tend to disagree slightly. So it started off trying to prepare farm workers, then, white collar job workers, etc. Right?
Yeah, the new factories, preparing for the new factories.
New factory. So you saw how the Harvards of the world and business schools of the world started doing more Socratic methods and thinking, etc. Right? I do think that. So I agree with you. I think that it will change, but I don't think that it's going to change. I think people will begin to extract engagement models that allow and prepare for a world in which AI exists, right?
No, I think you're right. We're talking about timeline. We're saying exactly that they need to change, but I think people are just starting to grapple with it. How about
it? Yeah. But I do think K through 5 will stay similar, and it's okay because honestly, brains are still forming. They need to know how to add 1 + 1. They do need to know that 12 + 12 is 24 without even, it is 24, right? I'm just joking.
Ted, what is your...
Let me put that into Claude. Claude's really bad at this, right? So listen, I think that's right. I think though the problem is really, saying honestly, let's give time and let's be measured would be one thing. I think the problem with this is the manner in which they do it, but also the causation behind it is driven really by testing, okay? And mostly, almost completely standardized testing. And so what you said, and the why we have the modern system of education is for training workers, folks, period. But also, why do we have the system of testing that we do, right? And really, and this is like, everyone has heard this, right? Like, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist, right? All this like testing, data. Well, listen, testing and data and quantitative, it's good. But the problem is we've now made that like the absolute most important thing. We've now basically, and again, China, perfect example. Let's distill down people's complete worth into a score. Okay. And you can't do that. And you never could do that. And with AI, that's even more ridiculous. And so the problem, I think, is that people are seeing change and they go, I'm measuring issues with this. And then they're saying conclusion, right? And without really rethinking what needs to be rethought. At the same time, we're rethinking work. We need to rethink education, right? And if we still stay with the current state of measurements, we're going to be bound to those measures. And that is what's happening. And again, this just plays into the forces of inertia, right? It plays into the people who don't want to change anyway, right? But the fact is, this over-reliance on scores, this over-reliance on only measurement is valuable, that is nonsense. And we've talked about many times, judgment, creativity, how you use AI is not the same way in which we were all taught as engineers in terms of how to get things done. It is completely different in terms of what parts of the brain it's accessing, and those parts of the brain are less quantifiable. It's thus less easy to say, your creativity score is a 34, and here's how you make it a 36. No, that doesn't work. And so I think this is really saying, look, we are seeing issues, okay? But we can't just look over here and like the boogeyman is the technology. The boogeyman is also the way we work. The boogeyman is also
the design of the pedagogy itself is actually like 100%. Needs to be rethought.
Yeah. And by the way, people are thinking about it. Okay. Yes. It's not that people are not thinking about it, but the problem is the speed of dissemination into education is super slow. So just look at the pandemic. The first thing that happened in the pandemic, people are like, all right, this is no problem. I'm just going to teach the same way, except we're going to do it just like this, Zoom over here, and kids are going to learn. And parents are like, that is some crap. That does not work. My kids aren't going to be behaved, right? Especially, boys, right? They're not going to sit in front of the screens and learn, or at least most of them won't, right? And most kids, basically, they just had a big learning gap, right? Except, of course, the kids that have more money were able to get things, right? They could get more one-on-one remote tutors and these kinds of things. But schools, by and large in our country, in America, struggled. And then after COVID, did we then develop the really good ways to go do that? Hell no. We just went back to the classroom.
Yeah. I'm surprised Norway, I am surprised of the overreaction. Like you said, it started off with our scores are going down, right? And then we made this
I have a theory of that. Really? Norway is so rich that they don't have to sort of pay attention to the market. Like China would never do this, right? That's not a thing they're going to do. Nigeria or India. But Norway has $3 million each for every single citizen that they have from their oil trust fund. Why do they have to be sensitive to your damn theories of education?
No, I'm not even talking about being sensitive. It's just being logical, rational. So, I am sure they're logical, rational, etc.
Yeah.
But it's the question of, so even the SATs, remember back in, I don't know if when I'm dating myself, I think it was in 94, because I only say this because I know people who had taken the SATs before 94. No calculators were allowed, right? And then over time, they then allowed calculators. Then they had a graphing calculator versus no graphing calculator section.
Over 20 years, they started shifting slowly. Yeah.
But there was a recognition of what needs to be known and what doesn't need to be known. Then they actually started having the handwritten, the essay where you actually had to write an essay because they were trying.
By the way, professors are going back to this because they don't know how to use AI. They're like, I don't know how to use AI, so you're going to write it in front of me.
Anyway. Just to be sure. So I do think that why aren't we instead asking ourselves, given that AI is here, right? We will limit it in some ways, but how might we change how we evaluate?
No, because I think it's because the people who are in charge of the system are the people who don't want to understand. They want to keep the system the same. By the way, let's just take a small sidestep before we wrap. Australia banned social media for young people. England just banned social media for young people.
What does that
mean? The US, sorry?
No, I'm always curious, what does that mean? Are people going behind? What does that actually mean on ground?
No, it means that they force Facebook to put in controls under penalty of litigation that people under a certain age cannot use their service. And I think in England,
so people are going behind.
It's only during the day, and then at night they have further bans that have to be enforced by the platforms.
Okay.
And then we have Norway doing this, and we have US states doing this. What do you think about this willingness? We've spent 20 years of social media, or whatever, 15 years, whatever you want to call it. But we're seeing this additional willingness to put bans in place all of a sudden in 2 years. What is and I'm sort of conflating the AI bans, because there's going to be a lot more of them, maybe 100x. Whether it's right or wrong, people are going to do it. What's this new willingness to do this? What's going on?
I think people realize they missed the boat on social media, right? I don't think there's a single parent out there who says social media is great for my teenager. Not one. Okay. Including the parent whose teenager is an influencer making $15 million a year. Okay. Even that parent is like, man, that person is undealable. Like my kid is off their freaking rocker. Right. But yeah. Okay, great. Like I feel better because I just bought a new car. Okay. Whatever. Even that parent is probably going, social media, not great. Okay. And so we missed the boat, right? Collectively, as a society in every country, we missed the boat. And now you're starting to see countries snap back and be like, no, this is not good. And the first tell, by the way, is the same tell as with AI. Zuckerberg and these people did not let their children use this stuff when they were young. Okay. They knew this stuff rots your damn brain because they built it that way. And then whatever, they argue in front of Congress. No. We have protections. It's all good. Anyway, now because we missed that boat with AI, people are saying this is a bigger threat, right, to our current way of working, which of course it is. And this is more powerful, which of course it is. And now this time we're not going to miss the boat. And so we're going
to... that was going to be my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that we're overcorrecting.
It's an overreaction because there was an underreaction. So people are trying to make it up.
Yes, that whole indestructible
that sounds really convincing. All right, guys. The thing that we want to wrap is, what is your sharpest take on this? What's going to happen next? What does this mean? We already talked about how it's early, it's reactionary, and we talked about the real issues. What is your sharpest take on what happens next? How do you want to frame, how do people think about this?
So let me throw out what I think, unfortunately, is going to happen, which is that because in many countries, many states also, what happens is that the people who have the voting power are going to be reactionary forces, right? Unfortunately, we're seeing that. And also, don't forget, in the States, at least, most of the educators of any level are unionized in the States, at least where that's legal. And they are, of course, very strongly against these things. So you're seeing that happening already, right? So from the legislative standpoint, I think we're going to see more of the same, all right? And certainly in the US, and I think in other countries, we're going to see more of the same. But unfortunately, what this means is that they can only control what happens in the classroom. They cannot control what happens in the homes. And so what we're going to see is people with more means and more capability to educate their own children now use AI, educate their children in AI, and they say, listen, okay, when you're in the classroom, don't be doing this. When you're doing your homework, don't be doing this. But now I'm going to teach you what really needs to happen. And these kids are going to be jumping way ahead of those other kids, right? That's what, unfortunately, we're going to.
I so agree. I was actually going to say something similar, which is, it's unfortunate because we are in this place where, when I think about screens and I think about AI, right? Again, it's a tool thing, it's unsupervised to use. Is teachers just giving, hey, go use this, and outsourcing teaching. And I think that's what where the overcorrection is happening, right? And they're just afraid of that and wanting teachers to teach the traditional way. So we're going to see a lot of that. And again, I still think it's great for K-3, right? But that age where students begin to become capable of making and doing, right, is that really sensitive age. And I think that's where the haves and have-nots, the gap is actually going to grow. So remember when when our kids didn't have the screens at school, but they had it at home in Kindle, they were playing these IXL games, etc., these little things, and they became very savvy, while there are other kids who weren't as savvy, didn't understand what the little coding mechanisms, that the coding games that we got them to play at home. So I think that's what's going to end up happening. They're going to be a little more AI native and intuitive. And then other kids will be struggling to understand the what, why, and where of AI when they get to those more less formative, quote unquote, years, but that sensitive year of becoming a maker and a thinker for themselves. So that's unfortunate. That's the big thing I think we need to pay attention to.
I want to remind both of you that we talked about an IANA for AI. We talked about the need for it. It feels like there has to be something parallel for education, because I don't think every jurisdiction, every country can do this by themselves, right? Like, because, Homo sapiens is Homo sapiens across every country. And, sort of figuring out how this thing is affecting cognitive development. I thought hey, audience, we're going to write a bit about this for a little while. I think there's something about this stuff we're going to talk about, but also this idea of considered manual work. Like when you stop to do the work you used to do manually that you started doing with AI and pulling back and doing it manually again so that you can practice the capability that you've developed over a lifetime. But it does feel like this is species level threat, honestly. That's how I feel about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your participation in this. This was a short one. We're leaving you with stuff to think about. We don't have big conclusions, but think about how you engage with AI. Think about how your kids engage with AI, and be a force for good in the world as we all collectively, as a species, think about where this is going.
Drop us a note too. Like, how are you thinking about this?
Comment on the Substack.
Yeah.
We'll have more
That's
thoughts
right.
as we elaborate because we have more time in the Substack.
That's right. If you have like ideas, if you're the person who should run the UN organization around education around the world, tell us about it.
That's right. Tell us your name. That's it.
All right.
We'll hook you up.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Yeah.